Imagine this. It's a beautiful summer morning in Beijing, and you decide to go for a walk. Being like everybody these days, the first thing you have to do is go to social media, so all your buddies know what you're doing today. However, when you open your Twitter app, you find that you can't get into your account. Why? Because the Chinese government has locked you out of your account in fear that you're going to post something bad about the government. This is why many people say that democracy is the way of the future, because people's voices are heard. On the flip side, others note that democracy is not the way of the future because they're becoming weaker. In the Economist article, What's Gone Wrong with Democracy? They say that democracy is not the way of the future because they're becoming weaker and that new governments should not use a democracy as their foundation. However, in my opinion, I feel that democracy is the answer of the future when establishing new governments. However, certain steps must be put in place to ensure that strong democracies are put in these new emerging governments. I will talk about these steps later in my speech. First, I do agree with the idea that, with the Economist article, that democracies have weakened. They note two places where this has occurred. One, the financial crisis of 2008, when United States citizens had trouble trusting what their government could do and what would happen with their democracy because of the financial state they were in. When people don't trust the U.S. democracy, which is sometimes seen as the stronghold for democracy, it trickles down to the rest of the new emerging democracies and makes it tougher for them to establish their roots. In addition, we've also seen a rise of the China's communist type of government. They have been economically prosperous, and over the past 30 years, they have doubled their standard of living each decade. Now compare this to the United States, they've only doubled this once. In addition, democracies are sometimes seen as dysfunctional. For example, in the U.S., the financial budgets of the past have been hard to establish because so many people have different opinions on what should be passed. It's taken a lot of tries to get a budget right. Now compare this to the communist governments. They have one group that makes the entire decision for all the people. This means that they get things done a lot faster. In addition, we've also seen failed democracies. In the textbook Democratization, they note that the U.S. is part of the supportive phase of democratization because they help to establish new democracies around the world. We've seen this in Iraq and in Latin America. But however, this process has taken a long time and shows that in order to establish a strong democracy, you have to get a lot of things right, which is why some people say democracy shouldn't be the way that governments are run. We saw this as well in Diaries of an Unfinished Revolution, when activist Yasmin al-Rashidi noted that in Egypt, we saw that the Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood, the first democratically elected president of this country, ended up being of a failure because they didn't have the right roots and the right process to establish a strong democracy. This ended up leaving an overthrow of their government. This shows that democracies are hard to establish. However, I still feel that democracy is needed. According to Freedom House, a group that helps to measure how free certain countries and regions are, notes that the Eurasia region, which counts for 17 countries and over 285 million people, have 0% freedom, as well as 0% with the press. This means that human rights violations are violated left and right. People don't have their voices heard and don't have their say in what goes on in these governments. Now compare this to the American region, which includes the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and South America, that they are, as a whole, are 71% free. All of them except for Cuba are either free or partly free, and this means that their voices are heard. People have a say in what goes on in their government. We see just how important a democracy is in Diaries of an Unfinished Revolution, in specific Tunisia, with Malik Sikiri, who was brutally tortured, actually one of many who was brutally tortured, in order to try to establish a democracy for their country. He says, quote, that he was scared his beautiful hope, which is a democracy that will evaporate away, and that his dream will not become a reality, because their current democracy is wavering back and forth, and it's not very strong. I believe that the rights of people are more important than a statistic. Yes, China's proven that they have been economically prosperous, but do they really know what the people really want? Do they take that into account? because they only have one group of people making a decision for a whole mass of people, a whole population. And this is why I think that we need to follow several strong steps in order to establish a strong democracy. In the textbook Democratization, they say that you could either follow the minimalist definition, which is the idea that you just have an election, you have a democracy, but this can't be the way that we rule, because elections many times are not the sole basis of what goes on in your constitution. You need a constitution to establish a strong democracy. If you have a good rule of law which establishes what happens, you can have a strong election. You can't go the other way around. In addition, we need to follow Robert Dahl's 5 criteria for democracy. 1, we need to make sure we have effective participation. 2, voting equality. 3, people should be informed on what policies are going on in their country and what's being established. 4, we need citizens in charge of their agenda. And 5, we need all permanent adult residents to have citizenship. If we follow these rules, we can establish a strong democracy, and one that will stick. Yes, the Economist article, What's Gone Wrong with Democracy, has said that democracies have weakened over the years, and I agree with this. But I think democracy is the way of the future. We can't have people setting themselves in the street on fire like Mohamed Bouazizi did in Tunisia, or people living in fear of the government. It is the government that should be ruled by the people. That is a true democracy, because people's voices are heard. When people's voices are heard, more people are on the same page. More people have a wide variety of opinions that can be heard. And when we have this, we have a truly effective government, because the people are included.